This is the WrestleBread Podcast, bringing you the latest news, recaps, and analysis of AEW and WWE. Get the unique perspective from a wrestling fan of over 25 years. Here's your host, Jaydee.
What's going on, guys? This is Jaydee, and this is episode 9 of the WrestleBread Podcast. Some exciting things that's happening this week. We just got finished with Money in the Bank and the fallout from that. And then this week, we're going to have the AEW's first event, Double or Nothing. There's a few changes that has happened with the event. First off, the match of Pac versus Paige has been scrapped from the pay-per-view. The information from Dave Mesler is saying that the reason why the event was scrapped is due to creative differences. Pac is the Dragon Gate champion and apparently doesn't want to lose to Paige, nor it seems, I don't know, this seems very confusing. AEW has really yet to come out with their own statement, but it seems like Pac does not want to lose as champion to Paige, or that Dragon Gate actually doesn't want him to lose. Either or, Pac doesn't want to lose. And unfortunately, what AEW is doing now, wins and losses matters a lot more than it does in WWE. So, what happened was we actually got the match of Pac versus Paige in another promotion. AEW released the full match on their on a YouTube channel, and that event ended in a draw. So I don't know how to feel about that. We'll see how the show goes this weekend to see if it was the right decision to have Pac versus Paige, because if they were going to do a DQ finish, they could have done that on the actual show. But I guess they didn't want the fans to have that feeling that you get with WWE, where you have the match and you know it's going to be good and it comes out as a DQ finish. But as of right now, the current card for AEW's Double or Nothing is the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Bros for the AAA World Tag Team Championship, Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes. We have SoCal Uncensored versus Sema, T-Hawk, and L. Lindemann. We have the Best Friends versus Angelico and Jack Evans, Dr. Britt Baker versus Kyrie Ray versus Nyla Rose. And then we have a 6-women tag team match of Aja Kong, Yuka Sakazawa, Emi Sakuna versus Hikaru Shida, Rihu, and Ryo Mizunami. I hope I didn't butcher any of those names. Then we also have Sammy Guevara versus Kip Saban. And then we have the Casino Battle Royale featuring Sonny Kiss, Ace Romero, Glacier, Brian Pillman Jr., and Joey Janela, Dustin Thomas, and MJF. And then we have the main event is Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho, which has been recently announced to be for the AEW Championship. Cody Rhodes released on his YouTube channel. They did this whole interview with him, with Tony Khan, and Brandy as well. Just talking about how they're not exactly looking to take on WWE. Tony Khan had actually said that the more wrestling promotions there are, the better it is for the fans, because he felt as though when WCW went away, it kind of left a void for fans who wanted a different type of wrestling than what WWE offers. So he feels as though that his promotion will just fill the void. I wish AEW all the best. I hope that this pay-per-view is very successful, because in my opinion too, the more options that we have for wrestling promotions, the better that everything would be. Whenever there is competition, even though it may not be direct competition, the fact that there is competition out there, normally everyone steps up their game. Everyone wants to put on the best show. And the people who will benefit from this is wrestling fans. So on to some sad news. As we all know, Ashley Massaro had passed away on May 16th. And at first, the death was considered non-criminal, but TMZ came out saying that it was a suicide by hanging. Ashley was only 39 years old. She recently tweeted before her death that she received over 300 pieces of fan mail, which she responded to. And then there's a report that came out about a week ago that her brain may be donated to science to see if she suffered from CTE. Now, CTE is a brain condition that has been linked to repeated blows to the head. A lot of NFL players who have passed away have shown that they had suffered from CTE. Unfortunately, there is no cure or any treatment for CTE. The only way that you can actually be diagnosed with CTE is after death, because then they have to look at your brain. Potential signs of CTE are problems with thinking and memory, behavioral changes, including aggression and depression, which is a lot of people led to believe that is what happened with Chris Benoit. It's a horrible situation. I actually recently, on Wednesday, put out a video of a bit of an important message based on Ashley's death as far as depression and suicidal thoughts. I shared my story of when I dealt with depression, and I really hope you get to check it out. It's on the WrestleBread YouTube channel, and be sure to share it with anyone and everyone, because you never know who could be suffering from depression or having suicidal thoughts. And I included a link to some phone numbers that will help out people who may be struggling with it, and the phone numbers will also be in the show notes as well. So according to both PW Insider and Fightful, with the Money in the Bank ladder match, which I will get to later on, as everybody should know by now, the person who won the briefcase was actually Brock Lesnar. And none of us really heard rumors that Brock Lesnar was going to be there or even be backstage. And the reason because of that is because they kept it a secret. They did the whole hide in the bus thing like they did with the Hardys. But on top of that, they actually didn't tell the people who were in the match that Brock Lesnar was going to be there. They actually told Mustafa Ali that he was going to actually win the briefcase. And they didn't tell him the change until the day of the show. And apparently they told him to basically climb up the ladder and try to grab for the briefcase, and then someone will do a run in. But they didn't tell him who was going to run in. So it's very possible that the reaction that we saw when Brock Lesnar music hit was his true reaction to the fact that Brock Lesnar was coming out. Then there's a report later that stated that they actually knew that Brock Lesnar was coming out, but I feel as though that's just WWE trying to cover their own tracks because of everybody getting upset about Brock Lesnar being entered into the match. Another thing that WWE has been doing is they've been hyping up their show in Saudi Arabia, the Super Showdown event on June 7th. In a recent ad that they aired, they said that it's going to be as good or better than WrestleMania. And I say you must be talking about WrestleMania 9 or something, because you're definitely not talking about WrestleMania 35. I mean, let's face it, WrestleMania 35 is one of the better WrestleManias in recent history because the fans got what they wanted. Yes, it was a very long WrestleMania. Yes, we had Triple H versus Batista for about 3 hours. The women's main event was a bit botchy, but we had the surprise of all three babyface champions that we wanted won the belts. So I highly doubt that it would be better than WrestleMania 35. But in the mind of WWE, that's what's going to happen. Let's talk about the Money in the Bank. The Money in the Bank actually is a pretty good pay-per-view in my opinion. Yes, there was some low spots, but in my opinion, there was a lot of high spots as well. So let's start off with the kickoff show. We had Daniel Bryan and Rowan versus the Usos. So I didn't realize this was a non-title match. I actually didn't realize it was a non-title match until afterwards. So you can imagine my shock factor when the Usos won. I actually had Daniel Bryan and Rowan winning, and I had that picked because I thought it was a title match. If I had known it was a non-title match, I would have had the Usos winning. Anyway, this was a good match, of course. The Usos are a great tag team, as we all know. There were a lot of good sequences with Rowan and Daniel on the outside. For example, the Usos did a dive to Rowan, and then Daniel Bryan tried to do a dive as well, and the Usos did a super kick to Daniel Bryan to stop the dive. I love the Usos in this capacity when they're handling other teams on SmackDown versus Raw. On Raw, they come off as more comedic, like comedians, and very jokey. Versus SmackDown, where they're more serious. I mean, they have their jokes, but they're more serious than they are just doing the whole high school bully segments. But all in all, it was a good match. Very weird thing that happened. We had Naomi, who actually had her entrance before the pay-per-view started. I didn't know if that was really bad timing on WWE's part or if that was purposely. But it was very, that whole entrance segment was very botched. And it was a shame because Naomi was dressed up as Bumblebee. And it was a very cool outfit that she had on too. But we had in the match with her Natalya, Alexa Bliss, Dana Brooke, Bayley, Mandy Rose, Amber Moon, and Carmella. I had Bayley winning, and of course Bayley went on to win the Money in the Bank briefcase to kind of revigor her career. But we'll talk about what happens with that later on. Now, there are a few botches in this match, but it was still technically a good match. Like I had said in my predictions, I really didn't expect this match to blow me out of the water. I knew who was going to give us the good spots, and can I say Amber Moon, who did the eclipse off the ladder. It really, the way the camera was angled, that eclipse came out of nowhere. It was beautiful. I liked the spot where Sonya Deville was carrying Mandy up the ladder to try to get the briefcase, kind of show their connection as a tag team. And then they had Bayley, who hopped onto the ladder and kind of was like staring them down. I guess they was trying to get a crowd reaction off of that. A part of the match that didn't work at all was the part where Carmella got injured and went into the back to be looked at and then came out from the back during the match. I guess they wanted the crowd to, pop for her coming back into the match, but that didn't work out too well. All in all, this was an okay. It was a good match, but it wasn't like blown away like a lot of the other matches on this card was. And I had Bayley winning, truthfully, due to the Sasha Banks factor. WWE has been ignoring Bayley this whole time. They're claiming that they were going to give her this spot from the get-go. But I feel as though this was a spot that was going for Sasha Banks, and Bayley kind of filled in on it. I think Dana Brooke was pretty good as well. She actually tweeted out that she was crying when she was climbing the ladder. But like I said, all in all, this was a good match. Not the best, not as good as it should have been, but that's where my expectations were as well. Next, we had the United States Championship, Samoa Joe versus Rey Mysterio, and this match was cut very short, and it was due to Samoa Joe, whose nose obviously was broken. I think they believed it was during a move off the top rope from Rey Mysterio, but after that move, he did the little super kick to Samoa Joe's face. And I think it was the kick that actually broke the nose, not the dive from the top rope. Once he had his nose broken, you can tell that his nose was starting to bleed. They quickly cut the match short very after. They had Rey Mysterio do the roll-up pin. This time, Samoa Joe's shoulders were not down. And then they had to do that great image of Joe looking shocked as all hell because he just lost. And we had Dominic, who came out to congratulate Rey Mysterio. It was very, it's supposed to be a great moment in history because Rey Mysterio became a Grand Slam champion. But because the match was cut so shortly, there wasn't that much of a celebration. Because everyone was getting over the shock of how short this match was. Unfortunately, this is very similar to WrestleMania, where there was an injury that was involved in this match, and the match was cut short very, very shortly after. This feud has a lot of promise, but the fact that this is the second match where it had to be cut short due to an injury, I'm getting the vibe that this feud shouldn't be happening at all. But we had a great part when Samoa Joe quickly went to the back, of course, to get his nose looked at to stop the bleeding. Dominic came out to congratulate his father. They were walking up the ramp, and then Samoa Joe came out of nowhere and destroyed Rey Mysterio. And it kind of looked like they were going to have Dominic come into the ring to help out his dad. Samoa Joe was kind of taunting Dominic, but you see Samoa Joe destroy Rey Mysterio in Dominic's face and then leaves out the ring. And then Dominic gets in the ring, and I thought Samoa Joe was going to turn around and run back in the ring. They're kind of teasing Samoa Joe attacking Dominic, but I was hoping for it, but now I know we're not going to get it because Michael Cole turned around and called Dominic Rey Mysterio's teenage son. And Dominic is 22 years old, and last time I checked, that's not a teenager. So the fact that they're playing him, they're quote-unquote playing him younger than what he actually is, if they are in fact doing that, that means that Samoa Joe won't attack Dominic. Sorry to all the people who had that hope out there, just like me, but we're not going to get what we want. The next match we had was the Steel Cage match, Shane McMahon versus The Miz. I had The Miz winning this just so we could be done with this feud, but we had Shane McMahon winning. Now, throughout the whole night, there was a lot of bad decisions done by the referees tonight. Now, one of the decisions that happened during this match, there was a rope break during the cage match. People felt as though that when Shane had put his foot on the rope during the pin, that it shouldn't have been a rope break because it was a cage match with no rules. I don't know. WWE tends to change the rules. I thought that you can put your foot on the rope to break a pin. I know you can't use the rope to break a submission move, but I thought you can use the rope to break a pin. But the way that this match ended, it was very, wasn't good at all. We had Shane McMahon who sweats like he is 1,000 pounds. Miz was trying to grab him and he grabbed the shirt and Shane slid right through the shirt and Shane McMahon wins. So it looks like we're going to continue this feud again. We probably might continue this feud probably all the way to SummerSlam. I really don't want that to happen. It seems like they're aiming for that type of match. Or maybe Shane McMahon just wants to get over on The Miz just so he can set himself up for his feud against Roman Reigns. Who knows? It just kills me that there's a McMahon that involves themselves in these matches like this. Now, Shane McMahon is my favorite McMahon. He always, busts his ass when he was wrestling. But once he did that whole Best in the World trophy, he definitely fell down for me. We'll see what happens with this feud with Shane McMahon versus The Miz. Next up, we had the Cruiserweight Championship, which surprisingly was not on the pre-show. I was happy that it was on the main card, but where the placement of where it was on the main card wasn't that good to me. Because everyone was deflated from the Shane McMahon and The Miz segment. So you had Tony Nese versus Arya Daivari. The commentary was pretty good. It was an okay match, but the crowd was dead. And unfortunately, with the cruiserweights, there's not that much of a difference between their matches and a lot of the matches that we already see. With the cruiserweights, normally it's, the high spots, high flying, things like that. But now on the main roster, we have people like Ricochet, we have Ali, we have Finn Balor, we have Andrade, we have a lot of people who do high flying and do a lot of, spots that make you go, ooh, wow. So it puts the cruiserweights at a disadvantage because if you don't know who they are, you don't know what they're going to bring to the table. Now, I've seen Tony Nese at the House of Hardcore show, so I know what he can bring to the table. Arya Daivari wasn't really that impressive to me, so this match wasn't that impressive at all. So I understood why the crowd was dead. WWE had to expect that because nobody really watched 205 consistently like they do Raw and SmackDown. So I felt as though that it was more on WWE's fault for not really introducing Arya Daivari and Tony Nese to the crowd. But this was just an okay match. It wasn't as good as it should have been, but it is what it is. But Tony Nese retained the title like I have guessed. I don't think they're going to do any major changes to the titles until probably SummerSlam. So next we have one of Becky Lynch's first matches. It's the Raw Women's Championship versus Lacey Evans. We had Money Lacey with the money guns and she was wearing money green and everything. It was, like I had said before, Lacey Evans is starting to grow on me. She has gotten a lot better, in my opinion. Now, I felt as though she was called up a little too quickly from NXT. When she was in NXT, her character wasn't really exactly developed that well. She had great attire, in my opinion. But she's not that good. She wasn't that good during promos, and she wasn't that good in the ring. But now we're seeing her starting to get better. The woman's right. Sometimes she can nail it on the spot. Sometimes she doesn't. But this match actually felt a little quick, which, I didn't really expect this, match to go so quickly. And then, unfortunately, there was a spot where Lacey Evans had Becky Lynch pinned, but the referee was out of place. And by the time he got in place, Becky Lynch reversed it. It ended up being the disarmer, which Lacey taps. So, I don't know. It was a little underwhelming because this felt very rushed. And as we had Becky Lynch going into the back, Charlotte Flair comes out very quickly and didn't give Becky any rest time. Just sat there and was like, come on, let's do it now. Let's do it now. And so we had a match between Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. And I had said this in a previous episode, and I'll say it again. For whatever reason, when it comes to Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, they do not make the attempt to actually make it look like they actually hit each other. There was a spot where Charlotte Flair went to do, I think it was the boot, and she hit nothing but air, but Becky Lynch sold it like she actually got kicked. There's a few times where punches, you could tell, weren't connecting. They were looking like Shane McMahon's punches. So this match wasn't as good either. But we've seen Becky Lynch versus Charlotte Flair so many times that with this time now, what does it add to the feud that the other matches didn't really add? Besides the beginning where Charlotte Flair came down and made Becky Lynch get right back in the ring. With this match, Lacey Evans interferes and gives a woman's right. This caused Charlotte Flair to eventually win the match, so I also had Charlotte Flair winning. After the match, Lacey Evans and Charlotte Flair started to attack Becky Lynch. The crowd started to chant for Bayley to come out, and then Bayley comes out, so this, of course, was very obvious of what they were setting up. Bayley comes, saves Becky from Lacey and Charlotte. Charlotte is down. Bayley turns around, looks at the briefcase. The crowd starts going wild. And she grabs the briefcase and cashes it in. And another thing with our great referees tonight, normally when someone cashes in the briefcase, they supposed to give the referee is supposed to give the champion the time to get on their own 2 feet before they ring the bell. Well, not this time. Apparently that rule was thrown out of the window because the referee rung the bell and Charlotte was still on the ground. Bayley easily won the title, and so now we have Bayley with the SmackDown Women's title, which is a good change of pace. I'm glad that Bayley won the belt and kind of gives SmackDown a bit of a refresher with the women's division. We'll love to see what they're going to do with it. They already kind of hinted that Becky's going to try to get the belt back. I don't want her to get the belt back. I feel as though in the women's division, there should be 2 separate women with both of the belts, with each belt, I should say. And it kind of helps out with the storyline. That way, WWE is not completely concentrating on one person because they have 2 titles. This was a feel-good moment for Bayley. I'm happy for Bayley and all the people who support her. I mean, she's been pretty much John Cena good for the longest of time, so her winning the belt was a very nice change of pace for her career. So next, we had Roman Reigns versus Elias. Roman Reigns was backstage walking to the entrance, and Elias comes from behind him and hits him with a guitar. Then Elias comes out, he sings a song to everyone, and then once he's done, of course he attacks the city. I forgot the exact joke that he said, but he did make mention that the city had lost some sports team and the city started to boo. Then Roman Reigns comes out. Superman punches him on the ramp. They end up in the ring. Roman Reigns does a spear and a pin. 1, 2, 3. Quickest match. I knew that this match, I didn't know this match was going to be this quick, but I knew this match should have been something that was on Raw. There wasn't anything that special about this match. I had Roman Reigns winning this, of course, but this was a match that could have been saved for Raw. It didn't really have anything special to it to make it pay-per-view or network special worthy. But, so this was the point where I started to tune away from the Money in the Bank to watch Game of Thrones, but unfortunately, we had ordered food and the food didn't arrive yet, so we delayed watching Game of Thrones live for a little bit. So I was actually able to catch the next match, which is the Universal Championship, Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles. And they were almost wearing the same colors, black and gold. But of course, as everyone should know, this was a great match. Not as great as everyone probably really expected it to be. I thought it was going to be a little underwhelming, but I knew because AJ Styles is in this match that it was going to be great anyway. There was an awesome spot where Seth Rollins went for the curb stomp, and then AJ Styles sidestepped and turned it into the Styles Clash, which Seth Rollins kicked out. It was a great match, of course. Seth Rollins and AJ Styles know how to put great matches together, so them two going against each other, you knew that this was going to be something good. Of course, Seth Rollins won, just like I predicted, because I feel as though that Seth Rollins is going to go on to go against Brock Lesnar, so Brock Lesnar can get his title back. It was a good moment after the match. Seth Rollins and AJ Styles shook hands. You kind of had that feeling that maybe AJ Styles was going to turn heel, but he didn't. So I'm very happy that he didn't turn heel, because I feel as though you can have a great match like this without someone turning heel just to balance things out. You can have a face versus a face. I feel like I wanted to rhyme because AJ Styles always say, he's the person that runs the place, but I'm not going to do it. So next up, we had an unannounced match, and I went searching the internet once I heard this. The Lucha House Party came out, and I was like, okay, well, this is something that's about to be a match that should be on Raw, because they didn't announce who they were going against. They just says a 6-man tag match. So they had Lucha House Party come out. They started to cut a promo, but they were still playing the music, so you couldn't really hear what they were saying. And then Lars Sullivan comes out. And if you could see the face I made, you would have known that I was legit pissed off at this. This segment could have been saved for Raw. The fact that we had this segment on Money in the Bank made no sense at all. This did nothing. Of course, Lars Sullivan was booed, like WWE likes to do. Any reaction is a good reaction. So Lars Sullivan came out and destroyed Lucha House Party. But a little something happened during this little segment. Kalisto busted Lars Sullivan open. And as soon as I saw it, I said, oh, he purposely busted him open. Now, you probably didn't know this, but Kalisto actually tweeted out when this whole thing came out with what Lars Sullivan said. Kalisto had tweeted, well, he better stay away from me. I'm Latino. When I saw that Lars Sullivan had busted him open, I was like, oh, he did it on purpose. And then there was a little tweet that came a little bit afterwards. Someone had tweeted to Kalisto, oh, you did this. And then Kalisto said, I did. But it was quickly deleted, of course. Something told me that Kalisto did that on purpose, because that was a nice little gash that Lars Sullivan had at the top of his head. But after a while, the crowd was dead for this, which I expected. They were either going to boo Lars Sullivan out of the building or they were going to be dead. But I'm glad that they didn't boo Lars Sullivan out of the building, because WWE would have turned it to, oh, he got booed. He's getting reaction. This is great. Let's keep doing this. So I'm glad the crowd was dead for this, because that's exactly what that segment should have been. Dead. It should have stayed on the paper from whatever writer came up with that segment. It shouldn't have happened on Money in the Bank. So next we had the championship match, Kofi Kingston versus Kevin Owens. I was peeping at this match while I was watching Game of Thrones at the same time. And then I went back and watched it again the next day. This was a good match, of course. I love the fact that we are having Kofi Kingston with his title reign being a great champion. He retained the title, of course. I had him winning. But this was a good match. Kevin Owens always puts on a good match. And Kofi Kingston is putting on some good matches too. I'm glad to see after 11 years that they're allowing him to shine as a defending champion. Next up, the main event is the men's Money in the Ladder match with Sami Zayn, who actually was not in the match because he got destroyed by allegedly Braun Strowman. And Braun Strowman was evicted from the building. He was banned from the building because of what he did to Sami Zayn. Since he's been eliminated, we had Ricochet versus Drew McIntyre versus Baron Corbin versus Ali versus Finn Balor versus Andrade and versus Randy Orton. Now this match was the match of the night. We had some crazy spots and I felt so bad for the bodies of these wrestlers, especially Ali, Finn Balor, Andrade, and Ricochet. And we all saw on Raw and Smackdown, and even with Finn Balor's promo, they were all taped up, they were all banged up. I knew that they were going to be so sore. There was the spots that we all saw and talked about and went ooh and ah for when Andrade did the sunset flip powerbomb on Balor onto a ladder. And Finn Balor hit the ladder so hard that he actually bounced up high and hit the ladder again. Randy Orton was... everyone was doing some great spots. Even Baron Corbin, even Drew McIntyre was looking good in this match. We had Randy Orton who was taking Ali and Ricochet and I think either Andrade or Finn Balor, and he was slamming them into the English commentators table. We had Baron Corbin that was hitting some spots. We had Drew McIntyre that was hitting some spots. We had Ricochet who was thrown onto a ladder outside and the ladder broke. There were some great spots in this match, and I knew this was going to be a really good match because we had a lot of high flyers in this match. So everyone played their part. Everyone did very well. There were everything connected very smoothly too. So of course we come to the end where we had Ali climbing up the ladder, and then we see the Beast come out. I shouted, "What?" And of course we had the Game of Thrones, but I had the Money in the Bank segment muted. Brock Lesnar comes out. My initial reaction was that I was so pissed off because he came out, he tossed the ladder to the side, destroyed 3 cameramen. I think he hurt Ali. It was rumored that Ali got hurt when he was thrown off of the ladder because he hit the ropes very awkwardly. Brock Lesnar climbed the ladder for I think is the first time he's climbed the ladder. And he retrieved the briefcase and he sat on top of the ladder and just started laughing. And at first I was very upset, but then I said, if anyone is going to run in to win the Money in the Bank briefcase without being in the match, Brock Lesnar would have been the perfect person for it. So a lot of people was upset about it. I don't like the fact that we had this match just for someone to win. I actually had Andrade winning this match, or at least one of the heels winning this so that they can run around with the briefcase and kind of troll. Kind of what Brock Lesnar was doing on Monday Night Raw the next night. All in all, this was a pretty good pay-per-view. It was a little underwhelming because in the end we had Brock Lesnar come out. There were people who were upset about it. There were people who was happy about it. It had us talking. I mean, it is something different. We always want something different. And we got Brock Lesnar climbing up a ladder on live TV. So now we're going into the recaps of Raw, Smackdown, and NXT. So for Raw, we had Brock Lesnar coming out bopping with the briefcase. That had me dying. I actually put out a tweet where he was bopping on the briefcase, and I actually put Barbie Girl music in the background to make it look like he's bopping to the song Barbie Girl. And there were a lot of people who was putting different songs to it as well. But we had Paul Heyman out there cutting a promo. But interesting enough, we had Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston come out to face Brock Lesnar and pretty much dared him to cash the briefcase in. And I liked that. I liked the fact that we had people coming up to Brock Lesnar. It's like, you know what, I'm not afraid of you. Let's do this right now. Let's scrap. It kind of, even though they like to book Brock Lesnar as this beast, you know, this dominating figure in WWE, I like the fact that we still have wrestlers who will go up to Brock Lesnar and will step to him. No, and be like, you know, I don't care that you are considered the beast. Cash in on me right now. And we had Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman, I love Paul Heyman. I'm from Philadelphia, so of course I love Paul Heyman. With the nice suit with the brown shoes. And he was taking shots at Mr. Seth Rollins. I forgot the exact line, but he basically said how he's jealous of the man because she took the main event that you wish you had. And I was like, whoa, snap. Oh, snap, son. Somebody's ego's about to be hurt. Somebody's about to talk to their girlfriend backstage. But Paul Heyman is great on the mic, man. He knows how to bring it when it comes to Brock Lesnar. I always say that, you know, if I go and Paul Heyman is still alive, I would love for Paul Heyman to do like a eulogy at my funeral. Just because. But this was a good highlight for Raw. So couple of bad things that happened. How about that new title? Everyone thought it would be a hardcore title because Mick Foley was the one introducing it. There were no rumors of them introducing a title. And then we got the 24/7 title, which is pretty much the hardcore title in concept, but the look and the name was horrible. It's green with the 24/7 is in gold, and it kind of looked like something like a belt you would wear during St. Patrick's Day, really. I understand the size of it. People felt as though it was too small, but I understand it's supposed to be small because whoever wins the championship will have to be able to carry it around and be able to run with it. So it'll be a little difficult for a wrestler to run with a title or, grab it immediately or anything like that if it's a big clunky belt. The name could have been a lot better. I mean, they could have named it like the WWE brand title, the WWE global title, something along those lines where, it's not the 24/7 title. But the concept behind it is great because it has that feel of the hardcore title that anyone can get the belt. Anyone from Smackdown, from Raw, from NXT, NXT UK, anyone can get the belt. So this is what I'm hoping that this could be what the hardcore title was, but now we have social media. And it's starting to work because we have Drake Maverick, who has been tweeting out. He was at the airport asking people at the airport have they seen this belt. We had Matt Hardy, who was hiding out in the parking lot with a referee waiting for the champion to show up. Some people felt as though, this is going to be embarrassing. This is just going to get people 5 seconds of fame, this, that, and the third. But that's kind of what the hardcore title was until Crash Holly came across it. From there, yeah, it's going to exchange a lot of times, but it's the way that it was exchanged that's pretty fun. I remembered when the Hurricane had the hardcore belt back in the Attitude Era, and Molly Holly hit him in the back of the head with a frying pan, won the title, and then she's running off, and then she's running towards a doorway, and actually the door is split in half, and the top part of the door slams her in the face, and then it was Christian, and Christian had a referee with him, and had won the title from there. And we had a lot of unique changes and a lot of unique segments as well. But I'm hoping with the fact that we have the social media that we'll get, WWE can use this to its advantage. WWE could put out on Periscope or Facebook Live or Instagram Live, following one of the people as they're running through. Kind of a little bit what Drake Maverick did. He was at a gas station. It was like, oh, this person was at the gas station right away. So just going down the list that we have so far. So first we had Mick Foley, who introduced the title. He put the title in the middle of the ring. And then we had a lot of mid-card and lower-card wrestlers come out, fight for it. And Titus O'Neil ended up winning it. Titus O'Neil was celebrating on the ramp. And then Robert Roode, I was about to call him the wrong name, Robert Roode, attacked Titus O'Neil from behind, pinned him, and he won the title. And then Robert Roode was running through the backstage area, getting chased down by everybody. He runs to R-Truth. R-Truth was like, I'll hide you. Put him in the trunk. Took everyone to leave. He let Robert Roode out of the trunk, and then Roode went to open the door, and there was a referee there, and he was like, what is this? He gets attacked, and now R-Truth is the champion. So now R-Truth is the person that everyone is trying to find. Very exciting segments. I mean, we kind of had Kathy Kelly walking around backstage, and I peeped that she had a ref with her. So it seems like anybody can get the belt. And so, like I was saying, WWE can do like Periscope or Facebook Live or even Instagram Live, following one of the wrestlers who's like, oh, I heard R-Truth was over here. I'm going to do that, this, that, and the third. We can have R-Truth getting pinned in his sleep, We can have one of the wrestlers sneak into his room somehow with a referee and then pin him. I mean, we can have a lot of segments. We can have, they can set up backstage somewhere for like a backstage segment of someone getting pinned at like, not really an airport, but like in the middle of a mall or something. Or at a bar, at a restaurant, someone going to pump gas and gets attacked. Someone who's just getting off the plane and gets attacked. I mean, we can do a lot of things with this. And I'm hoping that WWE kind of takes advantage of social media and makes this into something great. While we're on the subject of something great, we had the next episode of the Firefly Funhouse. And we actually got to hear a little more of the intro song. And I was sitting there, I was excited for it. And it started doing that weird stuff. It started to cut. And then you see children faces looking dull and looking straight into the camera. And then they had wording on their faces that said, "Let him in." And then it started to, cut to Bray Wyatt in the mask. So let me tell you, oh my gosh, never watch that Bray Wyatt segment with a cat, a very affectionate cat. Because my lovely cat, her name is Oriel, she's black and white, as you could probably can tell. She jumps up on my lap, scared the hell out of me. Because I'm sitting here like a little creeped out by this Bray Wyatt segment. Because, I don't know, I get creeped out whenever there's weird things like them kids staring into the camera with the writing that said, "Let him in." And then you got Bray Wyatt with that deep voice. And the cat just jumps on my lap. Scares the hell out of me. And funny story, so after this, I later on had, not really a nightmare, but I had a dream that had Freddy Krueger in it. So, does that mean I let Bray Wyatt in? Because that was Freddy Krueger. I mean, Freddy Krueger, horror, Bray Wyatt, trying to go for the horror thing. I think I technically let Bray Wyatt in. Maybe I didn't. That segment was obviously effective. Because I went and I dreamed about Freddy Krueger after that. Can't wait to see what happens next week so I can maybe dream about Jason Voorhees. Or maybe even Jigsaw. That was an excellent segment. It was short, but very effective. Now, another announcement that we had too, it was a bit confusing because this announcement came during the 24/7 title announcement. Mick Foley had mentioned that during the third hour, Raw is going to get a little bit dirty. And I thought he was still talking about the title, so this went way over my head. But actually, during the 10 to 11 o'clock hour for Raw, they're actually going to change up the way it is. So we actually had the lights dim, which I didn't catch. So I'm wondering what happened to the lights in the arena. And then the logo changed to like a black and red type of logo. So I don't know exactly what this is going to mean. Does this mean we're going to have better wrestling matches during that hour? Are we going to get a little bit more, language? I mean, I don't know what this means by the third hour of Raw going to get, a little bit dirty. At first I thought he was talking about the title being defended for the third hour. And I'm like, well, what's the point of it being called 24/7 if it's not going to be defended until like the third hour anyway? Luckily, I read up and clarified everything for myself that he was actually talking about the look and feel of Raw during the third hour is going to be a little bit different. So we'll see what this means with the coming up weeks, what they're going to offer during the third hour. Maybe all they're doing is just changing the look. I like the fact that they dimmed the lights. It's very similar to what they do in NXT because it puts the focus into what's going on in the ring. Hopefully they won't be doing that whole cut to the crowd thing that they love to do and just concentrate on what's going on in the ring. But I'm very excited that they're starting to make some changes to Raw to offset of the coming popularity of AEW. So now we're on to SmackDown. We had Big E, who came back. But now he is probably gone because he was attacked in the back by apparently Kevin Owens. But we had a great segment in the beginning. We had a person who was dressed up like Big E but wasn't Big E's. That was pretty funny. And then here he comes in all his glory, Big E, who was sniffing everyone. He was exposing himself. Not exposing himself, but exposing his like massive pecs. He mentioned that he still want Becky Lynch mom. But this was a good segment. Then we had Sami Zayn who came out. Kevin Owens who came out. Now Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are together again, which they're like magnets, you know. You can't keep them away for too long, apparently. They are very fun when they're both heels, but I don't want Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn to end up not really having a singles run because WWE loves to put them together. We had Ali versus Andrade, who was all taped up. This was a great match. I love how Smackdown concentrate on wrestling and give us good matches. I'm hoping that Ali gets a push somehow. I loved his story from when he came onto the main roster. I love the fact that he used to be a cop while he was wrestling, and the reason why he decided to leave the force is because he noticed that there could have been possible corruption, and he joined the police force because he wanted to make a change in the neighborhoods. But I respect the guy 100%. I read some of his tweets on Twitter, and I hope he gets a push from this. But this was a great match between Ali versus Andrade. It's unfortunate that WWE has these weird placements with their commercials, that they place their commercials in the middle of great matches like this. It kind of takes away from the match because you're trying to focus to see what's going on in the little picture in the picture. But all in all, this was perfect. We also got the announcement of Super Showdown. We got Finn Balor versus Andrade for the title. We have Undertaker, of course, versus Goldberg, Triple H versus Randy Orton, Braun Strowman versus Bobby Lashley, and then the 50-man Battle Royal, which is going to be just a dumpster fire. I'm shocked that 50 men can actually fit in the ring, but I guess it can happen. But we had later on, we had Kofi Kingston versus Sami Zayn, which was a pretty good match. Kofi Kingston, of course, won. And then we had Paul Heyman, who came out with the briefcase. And they started to do this very tight shot of Kofi Kingston, which means that someone's going to come in and attack him from behind. I thought it was going to be Brock Lesnar, but come to find out it was Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler is back, and he attacked Kofi Kingston, and he really attacked Kofi Kingston. I mean, he put a chair on Kofi Kingston's head, rammed him into the commentary table, started stomping on the head and the neck and the chair that was around him as well. The officials had to pull him off of Kofi Kingston. Then he went back and attacked him again. Kofi Kingston was put on a stretcher, but eventually he got off the stretcher and went to the back under his own power. Then later on, Dolph Ziggler came out and explained his motive behind it. This promo was not good. He came out and said that Kofi Kingston won the love of the universe, and it was supposed to be me, and the Elimination Chamber, he had all the momentum. It was supposed to be me. He won the title, and it's supposed to be me. He started to sound like he was crying. I don't know if that was the work of the creative team or that was how Dolph Ziggler felt as though he should come across. But he came across like he was about to cry. Because he did, in fact, said during the promo, "You're gonna love me." And I was like, You should have said this about 5-6 years ago, buddy. I was very confused as to why we had Dolph Ziggler versus Kofi Kingston. Because then they're actually going to face off at the Super Showdown. Kind of find out the reason why we have Dolph Ziggler versus Kofi Kingston is because Kevin Owens will not be going to Super Showdown. Gosh, tongue twister. Doesn't really say why. It could be because of Sami Zayn not going. We'll see what happens with the Super Showdown next week. It comes out Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, but I do not have high hopes for it. As much as I love The Undertaker and I do not want him to retire, he is way past his prime. It's starting to hurt to watch him wrestle sometimes. I think he should retire, even though I don't want him to retire, but I think he should retire before he starts having very, very bad matches to the point that it kind of starts damaging his legacy, because people are going to remember the bad matches versus all that he went through. So now we're going through NXT for this week. We had a ladder match that was announced for the tag team titles for NXT 25. It's the Street Profits versus Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly. The Forgotten Sons, Danny Burch and Oney Larkin. This more likely will be a good match. I mean, Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly really do put on good matches. The Street Profits has been putting on some good matches as well. So next we had Sean Maluta versus Mansoor. I'm very bad at names. If it's not a basic name, I'm going to butcher it. But I was looking at Sean, and I actually was sitting there thinking he kind of looks like the Usos. So I looked him up, and he is actually part of the Anoa'i family, which is Roman Reigns and The Rock and the Usos. So I didn't actually look to see how he's related to those three. I'm guessing he's probably cousins of them, like everyone is. And then Mansoor, he is actually from Saudi Arabia. So he is one of the wrestlers that actually tried out during the first show in Saudi Arabia. This was a pretty good match. I felt as though the timing of the match was perfect. The amount of time that this match took was perfect. It didn't feel too rushed, nor did it feel too long. This was a pretty good match. So next up, we have the Velveteen Experience. And this man oozes charisma. I liked Velveteen, the person behind Velveteen, since he was in Tough Enough. I felt as though he was one of the people to win. I kind of was actually glad he didn't win, because they normally don't do that well with the people who won. Plus, it was a popularity contest, so the two people who won, I forgot their names, aren't even in wrestling anymore. So Velveteen Dream was cutting a promo, and out comes Tyler Breeze with a new haircut. Well, it's not actually new. I've seen it on Up, Up, Down, Down, but he has shorter hair now. And we got a Breeze is Gorgeous chant from the crowd, and Velveteen destroys him on the mic. I mean, he was calling him Dollar Store Detective and said maybe you forgot sitting and catering on Mondays and Tuesdays. I mean, he was just coming at Tyler Breeze. And I kind of felt bad for Tyler Breeze because I thought he wouldn't be able to catch up. But he did have a nice comeback. He said, when you write your number on your trunks and no one calls you up, it's because no one wants you. That's a callback to one of the takeovers that Velveteen did, where he had on his trunks, "Call me up, Vince." And of course, as we know, he didn't get called up. I feel as though he shouldn't get called up for a very long time. So next we had Candice LeRae versus Reina Gonzalez. She actually kind of reminded me of JBL's relative, Reina. She came out with a rope and was swinging a rope, kind of just like Bradshaw when he left. Was it before APA? It was before APA, I believe. Before he joined APA, he would come out with a rope and he would swing the rope around and slap the ropes with that rope he was carrying. This wasn't that good of a match. Some of the moves did not connect smoothly. I haven't been the biggest fan of Candice LeRae. I'm hoping that she would come more on her own. Now, she was pretty good in the Mae Young Classic, but I'm just hoping that she becomes more than just Johnny Gargano's wife. That's my opinion. But she won the match. After the match, she was attacked by Shayna and company, but she was saved by Lil Shirai with a kendo stick. And it sets up, I believe they're having a match at NXT TakeOver 25, but I haven't checked the actual full card just yet. But there has been a lot more matches set up. So we're actually going to get Velveteen Dream versus Tyler Breeze for the title at NXT 25. We'll also have Johnny Gargano versus Adam Cole for the NXT title. And we'll also have Matt Riddle versus Roderick Strong as well. All of the Undisputed Era will be at NXT TakeOver 25. So finally for the main event, we had Matt Riddle and Johnny Gargano versus Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. So this was a great match, of course. I love the Undisputed Era. They all put on great matches. Johnny Gargano, of course, the big baby face, and Matt Riddle puts on ridiculous matches as well. Adam Cole eventually came out towards the end of the match, caused a distraction. Johnny Gargano went out and attacked him. Meanwhile, Matt Riddle was double teamed and the Undisputed Era picked up the win. So this sets up what's coming next week, which will be NXT TakeOver 25. Very excited to see NXT 25. They always put on a great show. They never have that many matches, but the matches that they have matter. This is going to be an exciting week. We have Double or Nothing coming out on Saturday. So I'm not doing, as you notice, I haven't done any predictions for Double or Nothing. That's because 90% of the roster I do not know about. So I feel as though it would be unfair to just come out and just pick someone just to pick them. But a lot of great stories coming out from Double or Nothing. They have their YouTube channel where they were doing episodes of The Road to Double or Nothing, where they were featuring different wrestlers. They featured Dustin Thomas. They featured Britt Baker. They featured Sonny Kiss. So you got to know a lot of these wrestlers before this event. So it just makes me more excited for it because you get to know the person. Like Dr. Britt Baker is actually a dentist. She's a dentist and she wrestled at the same time while she was in school for it, which is awesome. Nyla Rose, I found out, is transgender. And we have Dustin Thomas who has no legs, and he's out here doing flips and 619s and things like that. So this is a very exciting event. The Casino Battle Royale, the winner will go on to face the AEW champion, who could be either Kenny Omega or Chris Jericho. I have high hopes for AEW. I don't think it's the second coming of anything. I hope that both companies can learn to coexist because competition is good competition. But I can't wait. Next week for episode number 10, I will be going over AEW. That will be the weekly segment. It's all about AEW. Whether it was successful, where it wasn't successful. Wrestling is wrestling. It doesn't matter what initials it come from. It's all about great matches. So that's it for the WrestleBread podcast. Be sure to hop on Twitter and follow me personally at Jaydee Talks. That's JAYDEE Talks. And be sure to follow the podcast on WrestleBread. Be sure to leave a review and let me know your thoughts of the podcast. Be sure to check out the YouTube channel. I've been getting a lot of subscribers recently, and I'm very excited about it. Be sure to check out the YouTube channel. Also, check out the video that was put out this week about depression and, suicide prevention. Make sure you share it with everyone. Like I said, you never know who's going to need that type of a message. Shout out to Julian and Rob Bates from the Wrestling Court Podcast and AlternativeMinds.com. Be sure to check out their Patreon and check out their YouTube channel as well for Alternative Minds. Shout out to Keita and Jay from the Keita and Jay Show, Chris from We Talk Next Podcast, and Chris from Ruthless Rewind. Also, shout out to the Sports Entertainer as well on YouTube who shouted out my video as well. Thank you for everyone who's been listening for the past 9 episodes, as I'm going on to episode number 10, which is very exciting. Catch me on the flip side of Double or Nothing, guys. Peace.